Hi, welcome to the Free and Equal Network, everybody out there, Facebook Live. I'm Christina Tobin. I'm the founder and chair of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to broaden electoral choices through education and direct positive action. This April 29th, we're going to be hosting our fourth United We Stand at Texas A&M. United We Stand is a solution-based movement uniting students and conscious musicians, artists, and thought leaders to awaken political and cultural change. So I want to welcome one of our many speakers lining up like dominoes for United We Stand this April 29th, again at Texas A&M Reed Arena. It's a rockin' arena. Richard Gage, welcome. Great to have
Hi,
you.
everybody. Thanks,
Of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, for those who don't know you, but I think many do. Great to have you.
Thanks. It's so good to be here, and I'm just honored to be speaking alongside with you and the other star-studded cast that you have lined up for April 29th. It is going to be something else.
Well, we have such a variety. You know, it's a 501c3. We don't take a stand on certain things, but we have a platform that allows ideas across this political spectrum to be expressed. And so with the current state of our government censoring us, stifling free speech through social media networks to potentially removing the net neutrality, it's definitely time for an alternative platform beyond Facebook to rise, uniting all different types of viewpoints across the spectrum. And whether, in your case, a very emotional, more than most viewpoints on 9/11. So we welcome all viewpoints. Peaceful is what we really request at Free and Equal Elections, peaceful viewpoints, because it's going to take conversation, no matter what we agree on, what we don't agree on. It's conversation, I feel, that's going to bring us together and help bring about the real solution. So you're San Francisco based, right, Richard?
Absolutely. We've been in the Bay Area since we were founded about 11 years ago. And of course, that happened when I heard some really disturbing news on the way to a construction meeting. As an architect, we make sure construction gets built correctly. And I couldn't focus on it at all because I was listening to David Ray Griffin being interviewed by Bonnie Faulkner on the radio, and he was talking about all of this additional evidence that we had not seen or heard of on the mainstream media about the destruction of all three of these World Trade Center skyscrapers. And that just launched me on a path. You know, why are we being lied to about such basic physics about the destruction of these towers and hundreds of witnesses of explosions and so forth? And so we've been collecting architects and engineers after telling them about all of this evidence and the incendiary evidence, extreme hot temperatures, and the rapid fall of these three towers. Some people don't even know about the third tower. But when we tell architects and engineers this, and everybody else, but we have now 3,000 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation of the destruction of all three towers. And so that's some of the evidence that we're going to be bringing to United We Stand, but also the legislation that we have now. I'm looking forward to sharing with everybody about the Bobby McIlvaine Act and how we can get a real investigation into the destruction of these towers.
Richard, what do you feel, here we are 17 years later, what sort of political impact 9/11 has had on our country?
Oh my God. 9/11 changed everything. We're involved in still two wars, the longest lasting wars ever in U.S. history, Afghanistan and Iraq. And we have lost civil liberties through the Military Commissions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012. And any of us can be arrested now without being charged with a crime, without...
Right, detained, right, through the NDA,
Yeah,
Patriot Act.
indefinitely,
You think
and
it's
no
like
lawyer.
no coincidence that they define a terrorist? That's a conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah, right. We could be the terrorists, and it's a huge
Speak our
concern.
mind. Hmm.
Our First, Second, and Fourth Amendment rights have been decimated through 9/11, and wars can be started, and drones can be set over foreign countries, and Americans can be assassinated and even tortured without due process. This is absolutely unacceptable. And so we're just starting with what we know as architects and engineers. Once we get the architects and engineers awakened, and it's a slow building process, but it is happening, we will turn around the public awareness as well, and politically and with the media. In fact, one of the efforts we're doing is the University of Alaska has been contracted in a $300,000 two-year effort to do the computerized analysis that NIST was tasked to do by Congress, but which failed miserably in a fraudulent effort to deceive the American public and other architects and engineers in the country. So that's going to be turned around in the next few months as the draft report from the University of Alaska comes out. Really going to shake things up, and it's going to help the Bobby McIlvaine Act get through Congress. We're looking right now. We've spoken with 530 members of Congress, and we are looking for one who will introduce the act to reinvestigate the destruction of these towers. And we're on our way. We've got a massive project to find that one, get it introduced, and that's what we're going to be talking about at United We Stand. It's very exciting.
Well, Dave Casey says, take human action. And for any of you out in the social media world, feel free to send a comment. If you have any questions, feel free to do that like we did with Peter Joseph yesterday. And it's interesting that you bring up Congress, because that comes up in every interview. It's, and I will say it again, as I've said it thousands of times, it feels that, every problem stems from having the wrong people in office. This is something I've seen since 17 years of age, when I've seen firsthand the corruption and the flaws of the electoral system. So with congressional ratings at an all-time low and more voters and people considering themselves independents rather than a part of the two-party system, which is really a one-party system, I think the need to replace peacefully, the time has come. Many are resigning. I mean, and probably because they're afraid of being exposed. We have, for the most part, mostly sociopathic narcissists running our country that are controlled by greed and money and the powers that be, that have these strings and puppets. And they are not the majority. And when we rise, when a peaceful solution-based movement rises that brings about truly cultural and political change, I mean, there's just no stopping that sort of idea, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely, Christina. And this is a movement that you are right in the center of and tapping into, and it's growing. And we're just excited to be a small part of it.
Well, this movement is, I'm just simply helping to carry a torch. It's always been in my blood as a Tobin. For any of you that know my father, who's been running a company for 40 years, helping to Taxpayers United of America for fighting against taxes and increases. But it's just in my blood to not compromise, it to be, I suppose, incorruptible. And compromising is not an option. And what our politicians and where we are today, it may get a little harder before it gets better. In fact, I'm quite certain it's going to get harder before it gets better. But we still have a window of time to come together and make that beautiful, positive, peaceful change through the arts and through the music. And the youth, I think, are going to be key. So I'm excited for you to bring about this awareness with 9/11. Though free and equal, my take is, Richard, is the fact that we can think our government is capable of such a thing, that for me is a problem. That for me alone, that we can even fathom, question that our government could be capable. For those who are still unsure or sure, and we're a nonprofit, so we take sides, but that is unacceptable, and all the more reason to replace these people in office that don't represent us, but represent the big money and powers that be, and the ego too. It's just out of control. The people running our country.
Absolutely, it is a mind-bending when you look at the actual evidence, and it just stacks up unbelievably, and then people can see this on our website, ae911truth.org, and on our DVD, our landmark documentary, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. I mean, you can go to YouTube and search Experts Speak Out. It comes right up for all you guys listening out there. It is unbelievable.
That's ae911truth.org.
Yeah, that's our website. And
Right.
and by the way, the Bobby McIlvaine Act, people should really check this out. Just go to ae911truth.org/justice with a capital J, justice. That will bring it right up, and it's got to be a capital J, by the way. But then you'll see that we have this tremendous support, 20,000 others in addition, supporting the 3,000 architects and engineers, all of whom are going locally to their congressman saying, hey, have you heard about the Bobby McIlvaine Act? This is why it's so important. We're 9/11 changed everything, as we just begun to scratch the surface of talking about earlier, and and we want them to learn about the destruction of these three towers. Building 7 in particular, a 47-story skyscraper on the afternoon of 9/11, drops like a rock straight down, uniformly, symmetrically into its own footprint in under 7 seconds, as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky, free fall acceleration. That, by definition, means controlled demolition. But we prove it 6 ways from Sunday. Also, in the other documentary that we made, just 15 minutes long, with Ed Asner, called Solving the Mystery of Building 7.
Well, Ed's a personal friend of mine and an outspoken advocate for our country. He really is. And I feel he was wrongfully attacked, blacklisted, he says, and I see that by the movie industry for expressing, letting the people decide, really was his viewpoint. And he was labeled and wrongfully, and has since been a huge advocate. So that man is definitely of wisdom and of truth, Mr. Ed Asner, and he was the moderator for our 2016 presidential debate, which was pretty cool. So that's nice to bring up Ed. I hope he can join us at United We Stand. I'll shoot this interview over to him. Ed actually came here to Cambria, where we're headquartered, Free and Equal Elections in the Central Coast, and held a candidates forum last year. And I'll never forget his words saying, real change begins from the bottom up on that forum, at that forum. And that forum, maybe it was one of many different reasons, but it definitely helped an accountable candidate to replace a corrupt president of the board of the water board, an accountable candidate named Harry Farmer, by like 33 votes. And that just goes to show when the community comes together and has conversations and have forums, you can really make that change from the bottom up. So I commend Ed for getting involved on a local level. And I foresee many more leaders. I know Ed has been here. I know G. Edward Griffin will be coming to Cambria, and Peter Joseph, and I hope you too. And we'll hold events for people to just, we can agree to disagree, but let's have a civilized conversation about it and learn from each other. We have so much to learn from each other, Richard. And so for those of you who are here, somebody wrote, thanks for speaking the truth, Christina. Cindy wrote, that's sweet. Thanks, Cindy. Gary just wrote, stop weather modification chemtrails, geoengineering chemtrails. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's another, hopefully, topic we'll speak on our forum in the future. But Richard, you've sacrificed a lot to do what you do. Are you willing to open up about that? I know sometimes when you're up against being a woman, I can say, and doing free and equal elections for 10 years has gotten a lot easier, but it was very challenging to be doing what I'm doing and bringing people together. It's getting easier, but wow, you really took a stand for something that may have ruffled some feathers more in the past than now as consciousness is rising, but that was a huge sacrifice. I don't know if that's the right word, but
well, it takes work to make change. That's for sure. I've given up my career, a very good career that has done really well for me for
How
several
long for you?
decades.
Oh,
Uh, th-
wow.
30 years altogether now, 20 years, 22 years at the time I founded Architects and Engineers, or 20 years, I guess. But I began getting so many calls to go speak to so many places, like tours in Europe, 600 presentations around the country and around the world, and about 650 radio and TV interviews. You just don't have time to work anymore. So I had to let that go and start, actually fundraising, because you can't just quit your job and keep your house, right? Uh, so I have to. We now have a staff in addition to myself, and we do an awful lot of work, and we have to fundraise not just for ourselves, of course, but for projects. And so we have, $500,000 of projects going on throughout the year, and each year over the years, with major efforts to get to the conventions, AIA, American Institute of Architects conventions, engineering conventions, projects like the $300,000 study that's done by one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, Leroy Halsey, the chairman of the Department of Civil Engineering in Fairbanks at the University of Alaska. He's just on the finishing touches now of this study, which proves that this building, Building 7, could not have come down by fire, which is the official reason for its coming down. Normal office fires that's been given to us by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who took 7 years to come up with that ludicrous explanation. And they have 1,000 pages to diffuse the actual task that they were tasked with by the Congress, which was find out how and why World Trade Center 1, 2, and 7 collapsed. But they changed their whole directive from the government in a footnote hidden on page 83, footnote 13, which says, "Hey, we didn't actually do that. What we did is, did, in the case of the Twin Towers, come up to the initiation of collapse in our building report. After that, we just think the building came down because it couldn't handle the load up above the point of jet plane impacts, and so it came down." It's not analysis whatsoever. And so we challenged that again 6 ways from Sunday with peer-reviewed papers, presentations, and in the case of the Twin Towers, Tony Zambodi and Richard Johns have done a great job, along with Roland Angle. We're going out to the American Society of Civil Engineering groups all across the country. This association is actually responsible at its leadership for perpetuating the hoax provided by NIST, who says, yeah, the upper part of this building overcame the lower part and pushed it all the way down to the ground and then destroyed itself, which, of course, the physics of that and alone is ludicrous. But there's no photo or video showing the upper portion destroying the rest of the building below. That upper portion's been destroyed in 4 seconds. After that, we have freely flying structural steel sections sending out laterally 600 feet in all directions, 60 miles an hour laterally. Gravity works down, but these are sent out, and they're trailing thick white smoke clouds, which is, again, evidence of thermite, of which there's much more evidence actually documented by FEMA, by the U.S. Geological Survey. I mean, this goes on and on and on. The level of proof is overwhelming, scientific, and that's what we're marching forward with to try to change and waken up the American people, because they have been hoodwinked in the crime of the century.
I have goosebumps because simultaneously you were expressing what I was going to ask next, and I'm glad you did. So for those who are learning, or maybe those who already know much, I'm glad that you brought that to our attention. Even after this interview, I'm going to listen to that a couple more times because that's so much to sink in. And I urge the people there listening today to do that as well. Doug here on social media could not have said it any better. Doug, you give me goosebumps, because this is just like the key reason why Richard deserves to have a voice on our stage at United We Stand, and many others with so many different viewpoints. And he says 9/11 is the defining event of our lifetime. Uncovering the truth is essential to getting love and liberty back. How beautiful is that? I mean, that's we it's so beautiful. I almost have tears. Just thank you for that, Doug, very much.
We have no
And
peace and no justice without truth.
and speaking of truth, our paths first crossed back in 2014 at in LA. You were slated and confirmed amongst many other speakers, whether it's Larry King, Public Enemy, to perform, so many speakers, Dennis Kucinich, the list goes on and on. And you've been there since day one, United We Stand, when we were slated at UCLA. And you know what went down there 5 days out to UCLA. I can guarantee you 100% attempted to stifle free speech. And you stuck by my side, Richard, through the ups and downs. I mean, some people had doubts. Some people went to UCLA and asked their perspective, but didn't even one particular talent and didn't take the time to call me and ask for mine, being a reporter. And that just threw me off. But since it's forgiven, however, but you really stuck by my side because you could see the truth of what we're up against, the system. And I think you see that from the 9/11 perspective, as I've seen it, from the stifling of free speech. This university, which in a recent call, the University of UCLA, in a recent call I had with Dr. Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich, and the co-host, I should have mentioned at the beginning, sorry, Nexus Earth is our co-host for United We Stand. But Dr. Ron Paul said the biggest threat, the system, the whole system, the biggest threat, he said, is the university system. It's interesting, right? So I see each university differently, but truth will rise in the end. That's how I've always seen things, and I foresee that the truth is going to rise very soon as to what happened back then. So thank you for being there as a friend throughout all of these years. It's been almost 5 years now.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It's a delight to be a part of something so much bigger in terms of numbers of people who support free and equal elections. And I had to answer this question the other day, and I wasn't quite sure about it. So can you tell all of our listeners, some of whom are AE supporters, as we've gotten out the Facebook post to all of our supporters, can you let people know what are the different areas of change that are needed in order to ensure free and equal elections, and then maybe how A&E supporters can take part in that as well?
Well, thank you. I think the key to making change is truly bringing about cultural change. And how do we do that? Ron Paul once said, if we're ever going to bring about evolutionary change, and I like to say rapid evolutionary change, two things would need to be involved: the youth and music, hence United We Stand. And how we're going to bring about that change is very key. As we launch this tour, planning into evolving, it looks like we have the backing to evolve into a university tour. It's been a humbling journey, so I wait until it actually happens for it to be true. I foresee that happening. We're going to be launching what is the beating heart of free and equal elections. It's called the Election Assistant app. And that Election Assistant app will include every single Democrat, Republican, third-party, independent candidate running for office. It's going to have videos of experts like yourself and Peter and G. Edward Griffin and many more accessible. It's going to incorporate online debates to the rigged components of the electoral system. We'll be holding our 5th Electoral Reform Symposium hope you can be a part of this November in Colorado. It will also incorporate blockchain voting. It will be a blockchain voting app powered by Nexus Earth. During that call with Dr. Paul Kucinich, Dennis Kucinich leaning a bit to the left, Paul a little bit to the right, Kucinich said, when elections and technology come together, like he was saying with United We Stand and Nexus Earth, it's going to create something unrecognizable. So what can the individuals do? Sign up for this app, because when this app launches, we're going to be promoting it, and we hope those who resonate on our stage, which I think will be pretty much everyone, can help promote that app not only within our network, but within their networks. And we essentially become a hub beyond the corrupt Facebook. I will lean on and use a tool like Facebook to get a message out there. I will talk to any and all media. It does not matter to get our message out there, free and equal elections. Getting involved locally, running for office, volunteering, becoming a poll watcher, running for office. I did it, I think, 27 years of age. I ran for statewide office for Secretary of State in California. So those are some of the things you can do. And that app will help to guide, educate about the flaws, again, of the electoral system, from the ballot access, how to get on the ballot, to why don't we have proportional representation when about over 100 countries now, I think, have it, to the Electoral College versus popular, to voting machines. Why are voting machines controlled by Dominion, the powers that be that run that? So these are sort of the things in a nutshell. I know that was a lot to answer, so my apologies, but of how we can take action and get involved.
That's great. I hope I hope my supporters will follow up. Now,
Thanks
what's
for
the
asking.
what's the website there? Freeandequal.org.
Yes, I'll plug that at the beginning of the interview from now on. Freeandequal.org, FREEAND equal.org. So please check us out. And I definitely, I see one more question or comment here, Richard. And again, thank you for that. It's going to be, I think, rapid evolutionary change is super key, and it's just going to be a great thing to come together and maybe catch the system a bit off guard. I wish no ill will. I don't. Towards the Obamas and the Clintons and Trump getting elected, the good thing is people are more engaged than ever, and he's a bit of an outsider of the two-party system. And so there's
shake it up, baby.
There's going to be this independent candidate uprising. So so in any case, I see Dion here says, bear in mind the man hours to rig a 47 stories building and all preps. How do you schedule this done in visible image, the quantities and wiring through a building this size? These fires are too cold to melt this high grade steel. Even the jet fuel did only burn partly and at low temperature. Yeah,
do we have enough time to answer that question?
Yeah, go for it.
There's three questions there. Great. One is about jet fuel temperatures. One is about wiring these buildings. And there's another one in there. Regarding wiring the buildings, when you control the buildings, as did Silverstein Properties, securing the contract just 6 weeks prior to 9/11, in the case of the Twin Towers and those surrounding buildings, having already owned Building 7, he had control about where tenants were going and where they weren't. And by most researchers' estimates, these towers were only half full at the time of 9/11, half full of tenants. So they were unoccupied, many of these floors, and other tenants were being moved from this floor to that floor. So there was opportunity to get in. And one particular opportunity that needs to be looked at, researched, and we're coming out with a paper on it in next month, and that is Ace Elevator, who had the largest elevator modernization contract in history the 9 months prior to 9/11, which gave them complete access to the core of the building through the elevators. They had access to the core columns and beams surrounding them. So this needs to be investigated, as well as the security company, of course, under whose noses would have to have been brought dozens and dozens of tons of high-tech incendiaries, because it turns out to be nanothermite is what's found in the World Trade Center dust samples, all of them that have been tested by this independent team of 8 scientists led by Niels Harrit, Stephen Jones, from and this was documented in this 24-page peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal. And you shouldn't be finding thermite and the traces of thermite, both ignited and unignited traces of thermite through all the World Trade Center dust. It's an unignited thermite found by the U.S. Geological Survey. Up to 6% of these dust samples were previously molten iron microspheres, almost small enough as the human hair in diameter. And there's 6% of the dust. They don't even know where they came from. Hey, where does molten iron come from? It comes from thermite. It is the byproduct of thermite. Why are they spheres? Because the surface tension forms liquid, molten anything, or water for that matter, like raindrops, into a sphere. So this is the answer to this question, which has been covered up by the NIST investigation and the thermite as well. NIST actually brought in experts in thermite to lead the investigation. Unfortunately, they led them away from the evidence of thermite. But there's access to plant these thermite cutter charges without wires, by the way. Wireless detonation devices is certainly possible. And thermite detonation devices were patented prior to 9/11. So we have the evidence, we have a path for an investigation. And regards to the steel, the questioner is absolutely correct. We have, even NIST acknowledges that most of the fuel burned up outside the building upon impact. And then the 10% that was left inside the building burned up within about 10 minutes. So it's an hour or an hour and a half after that the buildings come down. So it's pretty much normal office fires with some damage to columns that caused this symmetrical, again, nearly free fall collapse in the case of the Twin Towers from top to bottom in about a dozen seconds, as if the columns didn't even exist. I mean, that's how fast it came down. So with the explosive nature that we already described, the evidence of thermite, and the hundreds of witnesses from first responders and others that we document in our documentary, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out, hundreds of first responders and others talking about all these explosions before the collapse, during the collapse. It's just endless, this evidence, and it's so easy to give this presentation because almost everybody raises their hand in these live presentations, indicating, yeah, we need a real investigation. I no longer believe the official story.
I'm glad you answered that in great detail, because I want the audience to really understand the levels of how deep you get. I mean, it's mind-blowing for me. So to hear all of this and back to like, yeah, so the way of looking at it to unite everybody, the fact that our government's capable of your perspective, of course the government did, but capable of this 9/11 terrorist attack is just, it's a problem that we could even think that that's even possible. So I appreciate your response on that. A couple more questions. You have a few more minutes, another 10 minutes or so. So I just love letting the people just to be heard and have a voice. So we have somebody here about Dr. Judy Wood from John Keidel. Hope that's pronounced right, John. Is America, as AE, 9/11 true? Friendly with Dr. Judy Wood. She has compelling theories on evidence for directed energy weapons being used.
Well, we're friendly with everybody, but we don't necessarily trust everybody. The evidence is what we look at first. And in the case of Dr. Judy Wood, who's written a book suggesting an alternative theory as to how these towers came down, before we get to the alternative theory, what we need to understand about this person is that she denies the evidence for explosions, and there are hundreds of witnesses of explosions, and I mean very detailed. These are not floors hitting floors, right? These are explosions even before the collapse. She denies the evidence for heat because her theory is that this is a cold event. So she denies the massive evidence for pouring molten iron like out of the tower 10 minutes prior to its collapse. Bright, glowing yellow. This is heat. And pools of molten iron that the firemen talked about again and again, and the 2,800 degree Fahrenheit temperatures that were discussed by Bechtel, and over 2,000 degrees by Mayor Giuliani, and endless firefighters seeing the pouring molten material dripping out of the material held in the crab claw excavators. So she denies that, and then she denies the evidence for thermite, whose byproduct is molten iron, and which is found in unignited and ignited residue, as we discussed. So somebody who denies the very basic forensic evidence that we have come up with, and then provides a theory with virtually no evidence supporting that theory, directed energy weapons, not that they don't exist, they may very well exist, but we don't have evidence that's consistent, coherent, to support that theory. We just have some unusual phenomena that's been pointed out. I just can't trust
Specifically,
that
what
person.
evidence does she deny? Specifically, what evidence does she deny?
Explosions,
Uh,
heat, and evidence of nanothermite and thermite itself.
okay, thanks for clarifying that. John was
Yeah,
asking that on social media, so.
yeah, good. And so that's really important. By the way, that's in her book, in writing, and I forgot the page number. I used to know that. One of the other things that she does is point to a video which shows core columns having survived the initial destruction for about 6-10 seconds. They're standing there, interior core columns, and then something shakes them, and the dust shakes off, and then you can see them going down frame by frame. Well, her analysis or assertion here is that those turned to dust. The steel turned to dust. Well, the steel didn't turn to dust. It's in the case of these towers, you can see it descending, and there's no steel dust in all the World Trade Center dust. It's been analyzed by several different engineering firms and the USGS. They don't find the dust of steel in the concrete powder everywhere. What they do find is previously molten iron microspheres, indicating elemental iron, which can only come from thermite in this case, in these quantities. 6% of that dust was molten iron microspheres, as well as heat in spheres, indicating 2,800 degree temperatures, the minimum temperature to melt steel. So that theory makes no sense, that the steel turned to dust. Yes, there were small piles at the bottom of both Trade Center towers, but as we discussed, that steel was laterally discharged outside the footprint of both of the towers by
Well,
explosive forces. Sorry,
I hope
explosive.
someday. I hope someday you and Judy, will maybe and others, will join a panel together. It'd be kind of cool to hear you guys have that, and ladies have those conversations at whole different levels. Because I think the consciousness of the world is pretty close to ready for it. I'm going to give John. He's got good questions here. I'm going to give him one more round here. He says, "How does AE 911 explain the toasted and overturned cars blocks away?" He said that Judy, was the first to point that out for him.
Yes. So if you have several tons of molten iron being discharged in thermitic reactions that are cutting steel beams, and there's evidence of steel beams being cut as well, particularly low down, these 45-degree cuts on these core columns, as we show in our webinar series every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific. By the way, just go to our website. You can see these presentations live the first 3 Thursdays of each month, 2 p.m. Pacific, on our website, ae911truth.org, you'll see all the evidence that we're talking about today over the course of 3 weeks. But oh, shoot. I went on too long. The question again?
So, toasted and overturned car blocks.
Toasted. Yeah, so
Yeah,
thermite,
right.
it creates 4,000 degree temperature droplets of molten iron. Now, that can explain the toasting of the tops of these cars. A cold event, as Judy Woods theorizes, does not explain the toasting of the tops of these cars.
Well, there you go. So, well, we're just really, we have a lot more to dive in and dig deep into, and I'm looking forward again to having you, not your first journey to United We Stand, but here we are 4 years later at Texas A&M. We're going to be co-hosted by Nexus Earth. Thanks, you guys, for rocking this. We're looking forward to extending our lineup of speakers. But Richard, can you plug your website again and maybe have some positive closing solution-based words for our audience out there? I'm so glad the truth, or at least this is coming to the surface where more people can hear your perspective, given your history being an architect for decades and bringing over 3,000 architects together for AE 9/11. I mean, that's a testament there alone. So please, if you would like to have some final words, that would be beautiful.
Well, you've modeled it yourself, Christina. We've got to have people doing things, not sitting on their rear ends. And you have provided a lot of things for people to do. And we also do that at AE 911 Truth. And we're modeling what you can do. So people can go to our website, which, by the way, we have a brand new website like yesterday. Very exciting, bright colors, and very clear layout. You can find things. You can watch all the videos in our new video gallery, the articles, and the up-to-date events, the calendar of items. All that is at ae911truth.org. The first thing I would do is go and find the videos you identify with the most and send them the links to everybody you know, every architect and engineer you can find. That is critical to your media representatives. And take the Bobby McIlvaine Act, which you can find at ae911truth.org/justice with a capital J, and get that link to the information in that link, including cards that you can give to your local reps, so that we can get a new investigation of the destruction of these 3 towers. That's pretty key. And to the architects and engineers, they may be more interested in the University of Alaska study. That can be found at WTC7evaluation.org. So do something, whatever it is. That's how we're going to make the difference, right, Christina?
We are, and spreading the word. And Trevor Roper Browning says, Richard Gage, keep up the good work. And I second that. So keep up the good work of spreading your truth out there. And that's what United We Stand is about. The truth of whatever every expert and individual, their heart speaks through music, through being an architect, through Hollywood, like Ed Asner, and more. So thank you very much for joining us again this April 29th at Texas A&M, United We Stand, the university that Reedy Arena has been so sweet and great to us. It's really uplifting. And it's what we've always desired since day one, since 2014. And I foresee it staying that way. And much love to you. Thank you again, Richard, for your work. And I'll see you in a few weeks, in about a month.
That'll be fun. We'll be there. Join us, everyone. See you there.
And remember, all you need is love. Can you see that? All you need is a little bit of love. So yeah. Love over fear. That's what it's at. And education.
And truth over lies. That'll help too.
Truth always rises in the end. That's for sure. So, all right. Take care, Richard. See you soon. And appreciate your support.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Much love. Take care.